budget meeting to order. Melissa, roll call.
Keith Derrick.
Here.
Steve Brenner.
Here.
Tom Moore will be absent. John Gallen, we're hoping to get by phone, and Dave Reeser will be absent.
So in order to make a quorum, Bill is the alternate for this committee, but obviously.
Hello, this is Jay.
Hi, John. This is Melissa from Borough Hall. We have the finance meeting here.
Excuse me?
Hi, John.
No, I think you got the wrong number.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.
Sorry.
You voted on finance committee?
Bet he'd love to hear that kind of stuff.
So we'll start the meeting. Obviously the rest of Borough Council is welcome to comment and participate. Public comments?
Yeah, let her finish. I don't want to interrupt the process. Diane, hold on.
Your call has been forwarded to an automated.
Good. Okay. Just wanted to say a few words on. It bugs me, and I cannot not say it. It's about the trash. We're going back to the contract, the $5 million contract you guys signed with the Mascaro, which was hardly bid on. We had 1.5 bids. And I know what you said at the time, that nobody would do the type of recycling that we want to do, which in the meantime, we found out that it's not, anybody tells us that looks into this, it's not a great recycling system. Yeah, we recycle, we put our stuff in our bags, but what happens after that, we never got any report from Mascaro as to what are they doing with it. And that remains an issue. And paying so much money on this contract at the height after the COVID pandemic, when all the prices went up, we decided to do a 3-year contract at the height of the prices. And now we're feeling the burden of this. We've already increased the trash fee. And if you remember, you financed some of it because it was a triplet. Yes, you financed at the time. We can look back. At the time, you didn't increase by how much it needed to be increased. You just went one notch back, which now you're putting it back into the count. You're going to increase now that leftover. So it went up to cover for the contract. It was like $500 per year. You didn't increase to 500. You increased to, there were 3 levels that were proposed at the time. And you took the lower one not to create, I guess, a public outcry. So, to me, this remains an issue. The fact that this was not bid properly. We signed a 3-year contract when we knew that it was the bounce in pay, gas prices, the whole thing, everything at the time was exacerbated. All the numbers. Now, if we had done just 1 year maybe, or found some other ways to do this. And again, putting everything, all our money in, on one contractor, Mascaro. I didn't see any synergies, I didn't see any savings, I didn't see anything over there. So to me, that's, $5 million is a lot for this board, from what I understand. Our income, annual intake is $4 million. So, correct me if I'm wrong, that's what I understood, right?
You finished?
So, yeah, I am finished.
Okay. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
So, all I'm going to say is, you can say whatever you want. It doesn't mean it's true. And there are multiple, and I'm not going to debate it. Chris isn't here to stop me this time, but I'm not going to debate it. But only about 1/3 of what you said is true. The rest of it, you either make up or
it's on video.
Misrepresent the facts, right?
It's on video.
The fact it wasn't bid properly is inconsistent with what was actually happening.
You had 1.5
The fact that we
bids.
financed it, we didn't finance anything. We used reserves in order to pay for
Correct,
it. It wasn't
that's-
financed. The word finance doesn't
Well,
come in.
yeah, it's a
So,
terminology.
just because you say it doesn't mean it's true. So.
Maybe I
and I'm
didn't
not
use
gonna
the right
debate.
term.
So, thank you for your
Seems
comments.
to happen a lot.
Yeah.
Ben, would you like to say anything?
I'm good.
Okay. So, that being said, before we get started, I just want to be completely transparent with the committee. There were a couple of things that Phyllis had asked about, one of which being the trash, and two other items that, as this draft 2 is presented, I just want you to know that we did some things, and I asked Michelle and Phyllis to do some things that we didn't necessarily discuss at the last budget meeting, but they are contained herein with draft number 2. In partly for maybe to expedite this thing, to have some suggestions, but in no way did it mean I made that decision. I asked them to present it this way, and all of those things are open for debate and discussion. And one of them was, we asked Michelle to go back and talk to either the department heads or they got together with them, and they took the capital requests and put them on a separate list of must-haves, and some of those items that they can probably live without, but put them on a list because not necessarily funding them at the initial budget, but with the intent of seeing how the year actually ends and seeing how maybe the first quarter of next year, hopefully maybe some things come in, some additional revenue that we didn't anticipate, but they would be on the list, and those are the things we go to first as it was requested by the department heads. So that's contained in here. The other thing was last year, when we did do the trash, we talked about doing it in phases and not doing it all at once. And what Phyllis put in was the balance of the increase that we incurred last year during the first year of the contract, bringing it up to a break even based on those increases and passing them on. It does not reflect any tax increase. And the other thing that I asked them to do, and it's open for debate, is to take the $600,000 additional pension and utilize the 2024 numbers for the 2022 valuation with the 7% and not use the new recommended MMO that we know we're gonna be stuck with for 2025. Am I correct, Phyllis? No, help me here. So it's in as basically the pension contribution for our portion, not including what we would get from the state, would be about $840 some odd thousand.
Yes, that was the amount of
That's what's in this
contribution.
revised budget. So, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that. They're open for debate as we go through the list, and Phyllis does it, but that's where we are, okay?
Understood.
John, just a heads up, John Gallen is currently at the doctor, but he's gonna call in as soon as he's available.
Yeah. All right, Phyllis, what do you want to tell us?
All right, I've revised the year-end projection to include the fourth quarter MMO as discussed, which was equal to the previous 3 quarters, and we added the cost of the diesel gas pump, but there was an alternate.
Jim is gonna come and talk whenever you want him to, as to that cost will likely decrease from 60,000 to now about 20,000, it came down even again as of this morning. But
For the pump?
yes, because he can give more specific information, but instead of the pump we were looking at, we would eventually abandon that underground tank and go with 1,000-gallon above ground tank, which is good for multiple reasons,
Yeah.
but it's much cheaper as well.
Well, I have the middle cost in there. We originally discussed 50,000, draft 2 has a cost of 35,000. If we can further lower that, that would improve the year-end projection.
So as of right now, you're projecting 7.8. And the reason it went from 5.4 to 7.8 is because you took out the public works building completely.
No, that only affected the reserves.
Okay,
With the year-end projection of 969, our overall fund balance is projected to be 11 million.
okay,
We did adjust the reserves by removing the future payoff or financing of the public works
okay.
garage. So our projected reserve, unreserved fund balance at the end of the current year is 7.8.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
And I continue to tweak that number as, with each check run and each payroll, as more information is available. I replace estimates with actuals, and I will continue to do that till we get to, into December.
Right.
Draft 2, with all the changes discussed at the previous meeting, as well as those Keith just outlined, the proposed deficit is now $3,333,000. If that deficit were to be incurred next year, this is what the fund balances will look like. We would begin the year with 11 million. A deficit of 3,333,000 would bring the overall fund balance to 7,682,000. The reserves will grow, they'll approximately double, excluding the garage, to 2,255,000, which would leave an unreserved fund balance of 5,427,000. That is 1.8 million less comfortable than we were when we budgeted for 2023.
I'm sure this is probably a really dumb question, but from a simplistic numbers, what am I missing that if we think we're gonna end the year at $7.8 million of unreserved fund balance, and we think at the end of 2024 with draft number 2, we're gonna end with 5.427 million. Why isn't the overall hit to our unreserved balance 2.4 million versus 3.3 million?
I start with the overall fund balance because we change reserves as projects become relevant, not relevant. So some of what we reserved did not materialize and we're not going forward with.
Right.
Some of what we reserved will be satisfied with the amounts that have been budgeted for 2024.
So we're adding cash back in for projects that we didn't do or aren't going to do?
We're not adding cash, but we are releasing the reserve.
But, okay, so but if we look at it at the end of the day, we ended up this year, we're projecting that at the end of this year, we're gonna have $7.8 million in the bank of not committed dollars. And based on draft number 2, we're gonna have $5.4 million or $5.4 million. So
See,
we're hitting the reserve for $2.4 million.
The difference being that the reserve at the end of 2023 will be partially satisfied with numbers that are creating that $3 million deficit. Does that make sense?
It does. So revenue, I get revenue versus expenses, projected expenses is 3.3. But in terms of available dollars, it's 2.4 difference.
Their fund balance.
I mean, when you look at it and say 3.3, 2.4 cash is different than the difference of 3.3.
I'm not following your logic.
If I have $7.8 million in the bank today, and I'm projecting that next year I'm gonna have 5.4 million, my expenses exceeded my revenue by $2.4 million. It came from somewhere.
That's true, and that's from the deficit of 3.3 and the release of reserves that were part of the 3.3.
Got it.
You wouldn't count that twice.
But at the end of the day, I'm not gonna have $3.3 million less than I started with, I'm gonna have $2.4 million less than I
Correct.
started with.
So what you're looking at is the net of the deficit
Totally at the end of the year,
and the amount, yes.
so we are eating into our reserves by $2.4 million. We're not really eating into our reserves by 3.3 million.
No.
Okay.
These are the items in reserve at the end of 24. Okay, so we start with a reserve number at the end of 23.
Yep.
Some of those items are satisfied with planned expenses for 24. The remaining reserves are for MS4, bike route maintenance, the purchase of fire apparatus, a balance left on the records library system, and a future commitment for a traffic study. And the work done, for the multi, MTF, what is it?
The multimodal transportation.
Yes, thank you. That will cover the pedestrian bridge and the Cambridge culvert. Future commitment for West Lawn Interceptor. Those commitments total 2.2 million. Okay,
What's the forest stewardship study?
The parkland study? The master plan study?
Oh,
Okay.
these are the assumptions that changed in draft 2. On Monday, a new abstract was received from the county, which further decreased values as a result of the regular appeals that were scheduled during September and October. Dave Reeser had indicated that the Western Berks Water Authority increase may only be 10%. So the water cost was increased 10% and was passed along in the water fees, they were increased 10%.
And if he comes back with 12%, it's our intent that we're just gonna raise ours 12%.
Yeah, I will adjust both accordingly, yes.
I mean, that's gonna be a break even.
Essentially.
Right,
I mean, there's other factors in there.
understood.
There's also an increase built into draft 2 for the balance of the refuse contract increase. And as you had mentioned, the
So
pension.
where will that net out then? Compared to, because before we had in the draft number 1, we had a $300,000 deficit.
I have that on the refuse schedule.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that didn't really affect anything yet, or did it?
Not
It won't
yet.
affect anything unless we move some of that, or it just stay there.
I'm projecting that we'll end the year with a deficit,
Okay,
and we will essentially break even for 24.
okay.
If we did no change to the 24 refuse rates, we will deplete the entire fund balance.
But draft number 1, we anticipated a hit.
Yes. In draft number 2, I had a break even rather than a hit.
So does that in any way affect our bottom line projected cash at the end of 24?
Yes,
Okay, by 300,
yes,
and that's already factored in here.
draft 2,
Okay.
yes. Other changes, as Keith had mentioned, was to scale back on the pension MMO. Rather than using the 1/1/23 valuation factors, the 1/1/21 valuation factors were used. That was the MMO that had been approved at the September meeting before the results of the 23 valuation was known. And selected items have been placed on a held list. These are the real estate tax values.
Phyllis, before you, could you go back that one? So we're projecting a 1% increase in health insurance, yet 1%
Decrease.
decrease, right? But does that include, do we include anything on the rebates that we got, not the rebates, but the shared for the claim fund that they have coming back? Do we ever budget for that number?
We always budget a revenue number, yes.
Okay, and what number do we give up? Forget, I'm sorry.
I believe it's 200,000, I will confirm that for you.
And then what do we get this year?
320?
I thought we got 130.
We got 160 so far, and we should get another 160 in
So
December.
320.
Yeah. And then we were given some mid-year claim experience, and it was a little over 200, so I used 200.
When you look at the detail, our health insurance has gone up on different line items for police and for fire. I'm assuming that's because of the increase in personnel.
Yes, and John did ask me to get some information together about staffing levels, and I have that to share.
Okay.
So we look at real estate tax values, which drives that revenue account. Draft one, the value of real estate in the borough was $1,060,000,000. As a result of all the regular appeals, that value has dropped to $1,051,000,000. That's a $9 million decrease. When that number is used with the current tax rate, I originally projected real estate current revenue for '24 at $4,700,000. That number is now $4,660,000. So that was a loss of revenue of approximately $40,000.
Okay. Just a question on this in general. So last night I was driving around the borough, having a lot of fun, and I saw 1, 2 houses that are on lots that currently don't exist, that are being built. One in the hills right behind the Redner house.
What do you mean meaning they're building houses where nothing is there now?
Correct.
Yes, there's a lot, there's no house.
Correct.
Okay.
So there's one in the hills, I think behind the Redner's
Yeah,
lot or
it's
down
on
below there.
Wyomissing Hills Boulevard.
And then there's one on Reading Boulevard.
Mhm.
And there's a total redo being done on one somewhere that I can't remember where the hell I saw it last.
Next to Doug Groover.
Next to Doug Groover, which is near the YR Club. How long, once they are occupied, does that tax change?
I mean,
When they are first reassessed and an interim bill is sent, that won't appear on the current line. That will be a change for the year in which that occurs. So it won't be until the following year's assessment that it's billed at its full value.
but his question is how long does that interim bill take to come out? And that's totally up to the assessment office. So when we issue a building permit, is when we get the approved permit back from Craft, there's 2 cover sheets that are printed out. One is for the permit package, and one gets scanned and sent to the county tax assessment office. What they do with it and how long it takes them to determine, yeah, let's reassess, yeah, let's not.
Because I'm always hearing, and rightfully so, I'm always hearing about the values going down, but yet there are, and I'm not saying that's significant, I get it, but it was just a point that I wanted to, there are some positives that are going on.
Yeah,
with
that
the
abstract
borough.
you get every month shows some increase for mainly residential properties.
Okay.
So at this time with the revised abstract, if a tax increase was considered, each 1/10 of a mil would increase revenue by approximately $105,000. These are the refuse fees. In '22, under the expired contract, our hauler's charges were $518,000. At that time, we were charging residents $250 per year. When the contracts were renegotiated, a 3-year contract, 23 being the first year, the contractor's rate increased from $518 to $1,334,000. So the borough incurred an increase of 157%. What was passed on to the resident was an increase of 80%. So the fee charged annually was $250 originally, increased to $450. In draft 1, with no increase, the refuse fund alone would generate a deficit of $330,000. And the fund balance would fall to just $18,000, which would not sustain the next month's invoice. So I put through an increase that would essentially break even for the year of '24. The number that would be needed in fees would change from $450 up to $555. It would be a 23% increase over the current year fees. With that, the revenues would exceed expenses by just $1,000, and our fund balance would remain at the $350 level. So that's what's been built into draft 2. Any questions on that?
So that is clearly one target where we can gain additional revenue for the budget without taking extra overhead. We financed, no, we didn't finance.
Did
We
not
finance. We paid.
It's just the term.
We saved the taxpayers
You moved it
dollars
from one
by
pocket
having
to
the
another.
monies, the excess money from what we're charging versus what we're getting billed we saved the taxpayers dollars because we didn't pass that whole thing through.
And we talked about it last year, and we said that we would do it in phases.
Yeah.
And
So-
this is the phase, and I would contend that I'd rather see this than a tax increase.
Yeah.
So we started with a fund balance at the end of '22 of $680,000. Current year will eat into that fund balance by $331,000. So we will be left with $349.
So we're saving the taxpayers $381,000 because we're not charging them the full refuse fee.
In 2023.
Yeah,
Correct.
not for next year.
Correct.
And in 2024, we're passing on the full amount, which is what we,
Well, we're still financing the three.
not
I'm
us.
saying it on purpose now.
We utilize the fund balance.
We're utilizing the fund balance.
I'd rather see that go to $150 than I would anything else.
Excuse me?
I'm not saying we do it now, but if we need to find a way to increase revenues, sharing more with the taxpayers for the actual cost of something versus any other way, well, I think this is the way, one way to do it. I agree that this is a pretty big increase, 23% is a big increase, but the reality of it is,
And it's in line with every other community, and they're getting a higher level of service in terms of the recycle, the
Yard waste.
the yard waste. So they're getting a lot of value. I think there's a strong case to be made that it was undercharged for a long time.
Is there 1 year left on the Scarrow contract?
I think it's 2 years.
24 will be year
Would be
2.
through 25.
Does it make any sense before you do anything with what you're intending on doing, is sitting down with the Scarrow and trying to extend that rather than finish that one and expect another increase?
We have the ability to extend our
I think-
contract.
I think the issue is
There's a clause.
the circumstances continue to change. The fuel probably has come down compared to where it was. So I don't know that we want to start renegotiating the contract now.
I think there's a cost of living increase
Yeah.
year to year. And
Well, we
then
also-
The reason for that dramatic increase was we did extend the contract, okay, for 2 years.
Yeah, but if we're gonna have to monkey around with the numbers now for next year, and then you only have 1 more year left with the Scarrow.
We can still reserve the right then too.
I don't disagree with Steve that people will understand fee for service. But I also think that this then goes just to the residents, and the industries and the commercial properties aren't affected by this. So my contention would be, and I do think that we could probably get away with 1 more year of no tax increase if we do this. But at the same time, the fact that we are eating into our unreserved dollars by $2.4 billion, and we have other things on the horizon, that we are gonna have to do something. And the way that the costs that in general that have gone up are a lot of the emergency services. And I think that at some point in time, maybe it's next year, that we have to look at an emergency service tax. But by putting the emergency service tax in, now you're not just hitting the residents, you're also generating dollars from commercial, which they're using they're using the police and the fire far more than the residents in most cases are. So I think we have to look at that rather than taking it easy. I don't think it's fair that we use taxpayer dollars to supplement the refuse costs. And if for whatever reason we negotiate in 2 years from now it comes down, I think we should pass that savings on to the consumer as well. But that would be my suggestion for the next move, would be some emergency service so that the commercial properties share in the increase
Let me ask you
in
a question.
revenue.
Can you actually bifurcate the residential and commercial cost that's passed along for emergency services to
I don't.
indicate a
Well, it's based
larger-
off your assessed value.
Yeah, it's based on your assessed value, so proportionally they would pay more, but I don't think you can indicate we want commercial to pay more than,
Okay.
from a percentage standpoint, or whatever
You can't, you pass the millage and
the
it's,
units
it-
or something.
it's a flat millage rate based off of,
Yes,
But that way the commercial properties would pay for it.
Yeah.
So it could result in a smaller increase for residents
Right,
as a proportion of dollars,
right.
and generate a higher number of income. Okay,
Next, to revisit the capital request list. The items that are shaded in green are changes that have occurred since draft one. The items that are now marked in orange are those that have been placed on the hold list. So we got a revised estimate as the cost to be incurred, in '24 for the records library system. They just seem to be
Slow on invoicing.
delay, yeah. So we decreased that to 80,000, removed the Borough Hall renovations. The Ford Interceptor for the police department has been placed on the hold list, as has the LED lighting at the police station and the fitness equipment at the fire station. The pillars that were part of the street work have been placed on hold. Truck 32 has been placed on hold. The backhoe and truck 22 have been moved to the water fund. The resurfacing of Stonehouse tennis courts have been placed on hold, as are the benches throughout the parklands. Just taking this up there. And the brush hog for the parks department.
Jenna, I think I heard you make a comment about the fire department fitness equipment. Put on hold, the actual creation of the space is still in there. My thought was, let's at least get the area fit out, and then we can work on getting the fitness equipment either in a future year or through some type of grant.
With the equipment that was,
Whoever looked at the cost of it, there's a fitness, commercial fitness center, a couple doors down.
That was one of the
yeah, my
ideas.
suggestion too, I agree with
That
you.
was one of the ideas that one of the captains in the fire department actually floated to me. Would it make more sense to look at, similar to in the PD collective bargaining agreement, we covered their gym membership.
Absolutely.
Would it make more sense to work with a community-based gym
Well,
to
they're
get
right
them
down the street.
memberships?
Right, so I
Yes.
don't know, I just get them a pass so they go in 24/7 and.
Well, there is the incentive that the police have, well, yes, that was discussed. One of the downfalls that the firefighters said was, well, they can't use it while they're working. They have to leave the station.
And they're required to work out while they're on shift.
Right.
Well, I understand that, but I mean, it's a couple doors down from us.
That's not, NFPA doesn't waiver.
Part of their exercise would be run back to the fire station.
I agree with that.
We have time.
wind sprints.
Yeah, I mean, again, you know,
And put clothes on while you're there.
everything, all rules and regulations from NFPA are recommendations.
Yeah, you know what, Bill, I think we get way too hung up.
Oh, I totally agree.
You got 95% of the departments in Berks County that don't even come close to NFPA standards. And we're gonna worry about whether we're paying their gym membership 2 doors down versus spending $30,000 for fitness
I
equipment.
don't disagree.
50.
Yeah, exactly.
It just.
You know, until we know exactly what we're doing down there, I don't think we should, you know, it should be put on hold. You know, there's gonna be
I
a lot
have
of
no
change.
problem getting membership. Now, I don't know that fitness center is open 24/7.
No, that's why I said, part of the deal I'd have with them is I'd give them each key, and they can go in whenever they want it, or at least talk.
I mean, it's
to them
not like they
about
don't
that.
have exercise equipment they can utilize right now.
Yeah, have you been in the space it's in?
Yes, I do. So, okay, fix up the space, if you will, make it more conducive.
Well, why don't we give that to fire and police to discuss, but as far as budgeting concerned, it's on hold.
Yes.
Yep.
So the improvement to the space is still in, the equipment itself
Is
has
not.
been put on hold. Under the water department, the
Oh, I thought
backhoe,
we were moving that all to,
No, I thought I explained that to you on the phone. I split it half and half.
oh,
So
okay.
the cost to create the space is drywall it out, mechanicals, finishing. Put their existing equipment back in there and then put on hold the purchase of new equipment.
You know, the one thing that we never look into, and that is, you know, public donations. Okay, I bet you that somewhere, you know, amongst our businesses in Wyomissing, we don't have people in the business community that would contribute monies, you know, towards exercise equipment, just like Don Fox did with the chairs.
Actually already working on that and have meetings set up with Boss Cubs and the Wyomissing Foundation.
Well, I think you've got something there. There's a lot of fitness operations in operation now, all of which have their home offices in Wyomissing, and they're always upgrading their equipment. They no doubt and have all kinds of runs and stuff in the community. They might, if you go to them and say, we'd like to get a few pieces of equipment for the fire department. Now, you might get something you want, but they may have stuff if you ask them.
You know, and it's the same as,
They'll get a deduction.
the medical marijuana facility, okay? We had a name of somebody, in Chicago to contact, you know, who, they have a department, you know, specifically for contributing to municipalities that they serve.
Well,
Have
for
we
this,
ever contacted
for this
them?
discussion, it's out, right? Equipment's out.
It's
The
on
equipment's
hold.
out.
It's out for now, but if we can find a way to get equipment, that has nothing to do with this context of this
Right.
conversation anymore, so let's not drag it out.
So at this point, these are
Sorry.
the projects that are currently on hold.
Yeah. Let me just finish, under
Yeah,
the
go ahead.
water department, the equipment that we moved from the general fund, the backhoe remains in the budget, but truck 22 has been placed on hold. So this is the list of held equipment, it totals $422,000. Again, the police car, the truck has already been ordered, the LED lighting, the fitness equipment, the pillars, truck 32, the stone house, tennis court resurfacing, benches, a brush hog, and truck 22. We did not have information when we last met about the brush hog. I have some photos here. Jim, do you want to describe that equipment? Are you familiar with that?
That's a brush.
It's a brush hog, yeah.
Yeah.
I still have not had the chance to speak to Dwayne about the details of it, so I'd rather
Okay.
not comment on
What
it.
Greg shared with me, this is cut and paste from his email, is that it's drugged behind a tractor. The tractor is currently drugged behind, is 20 years old. We'd like to get one that better fits the tractor that we are now utilizing. That piece of equipment is on the hold list. And the pillars, this just gives you the general location at Penn Avenue and Wyomissing Hills Boulevard. So you can get the historical significance of the pillars, and this is the general condition as it exists now. The pillars are currently on hold as well. And finally, this is the revised street list. Contingencies were reduced from 15% to 10%, and Buckingham Drive was removed. So now, rather than the street work totaling $1,376,000, the street work is at $1,125,000. That was a reduction in expense of $251,000.
And Jim, just as a side note, I talked to 3 people that live on Buckingham. They were all shocked that we were even gonna pave it in the first place.
There's the cracks are so severe, there's weeds growing out of that
Yeah.
street, but
I asked Jim to come quickly just to give you an update on the fuel pump. Since we started talking about that, but he wasn't here.
at the last meeting, this group was gracious enough to give us some money for our diesel fuel issue. Things have changed already. The pump that we wanted would be a 10-week lead time, which doesn't help us at all with getting diesel for leaf collection. Another brand that would be more readily available is a different footprint. They'd have to do some minor excavation. They get into maybe contaminated soils and DEP rules where you have to have these fiberglass holding tubs underneath. It started escalating. The underground tanks there are original to that building, late 80s, so they're 30-some years old. So we came up with this, what I think is a good idea. Over time, those underground tanks, there's a lot of rules, a lot of regulations. They're fiberglass. And maybe it's time to kind of abandon them over time, and we could start going with these above-ground tanks at a lesser cost. We could get to at least alleviate our diesel problem.
Yeah.
It's a 1,000-gallon tank. We could have that installed for around 20 grand, and I think the number we used last time was more than that. I forget the exact number.
60,000.
60, yeah.
Yeah, good idea.
But over time, over the next 2 or 3 years, we would need to abandon that diesel tank.
So what do you have to do, just fill it, or you have to dig them up?
As I understand it, you can dig it up
Fill it with sand
or
or
fill
something?
it with flowable fill.
Or concrete or something?
Flowable fill is concrete, more or less.
Yeah.
But Hafer Petroleum, who we've been dialoguing with, says it's probably cheaper to pull them out. But I think we try to abandon the diesel tank next year, and then do the unleaded tank, over the next 2-3 years. Do the
Well, but
unleaded
for the
tank.
diesel, why wouldn't you just do it, if you're, rather than fixing the pump, if you're not doing, why wouldn't you just do this now versus the pump?
We
That's
are.
what-
He's
yeah.
saying
Oh.
do this now, abandon the tank next year,
Oh,
and then do the gas tank
okay,
the
I see
following.
what you're saying,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
none of it, okay, I thought you were doing.
So all we want to do now is purchase this above ground diesel tank for 20 grand, get it up and running.
Yeah,
Where
And
exactly?
then we'll worry about abandoning the existing
does
diesel
that go over
underground
there,
tank.
or over at the parks,
This would be over at the main garage.
at your garage?
Yeah.
So is that for this year?
Yes, well, it's already, it's in 2023
That's what I
expenditure,
thought.
we already approved $60,000 or $50,000 for a
Yeah,
pump.
we don't have a true cost yet on that abandonment, we're working on it as we speak.
But that's not something we have to do immediately,
No.
this resolves your emergency
This
situation.
does, this does.
And what's that, 1,000? The underground's 1,000?
This is a 1,000-gallon tank, but when we do the unleaded, it would probably be 2,500,
And what's the underground now?
2,000. So it is smaller.
But you just fill it all.
Yeah, you have to fill it well.
So do you have to build a little cool pad?
It doesn't need to go on a concrete pad, but we have to supply them with a level surface, so we'll have to stone it and roll it. Still don't know about we have to get electric there and the ballers.
But you can do that.
We can do that
Are we
Yourself.
gonna are you gonna put it in a spot where the future improvements over there is not gonna have to?
We will be taking that into consideration.
Yeah, great idea. I think that's
I approve.
a much
Thank you.
better option.
The 23 projection currently has a cost for 35,000 included to address this project.
I told her to drop it earlier in the week based off the conversation, but
Okay.
he didn't have a number yet.
All right, so it's 20 plus site prep, which you're gonna do?
No, the actual, I'm throwing that funny because the actual unit is 14,
Oh,
and I'm saying
So I can take
$6,000 in
another
site
15
prep.
out.
take another 15 out of there, good.
18.
So, the stuff that's on hold, the lead time on the trucks, like truck 32's on hold, what's the lead time on getting that?
I have no idea. I would plan on a year.
Okay, so-
The thing that's changing in truck purchasing is when we used to order a truck off this state co-stars contract, like the police do. They put the order in to Ford, and we usually take delivery that fall. I put the order in January, take delivery in the fall. But now all bets are off, and, not this truck we just took delivery of, but an earlier one, you buy them, if a dealer has a white pickup truck on the lot for retail sale, we purchase that
Yeah.
instead, but they don't wanna sell them to us at that co-star's price.
Right,
They can get full money for them.
So can you live with just getting 22 and holding off on 32 for now?
One is better than none,
Exactly.
yes,
Neither of which are on.
but both of them are on hold,
Right.
yeah.
No, I thought we were gonna use the water fund to pay for,
That's a backhoe.
It was the backhoe is all that,
oh, the backhoe.
the back,
Okay.
when discussing, I think it was with Greg, I said, of the three, what's most important? And the backhoe was most important.
I mean, I understand the budget predicament we're in, but, we asked for 2 trucks, and, now it looks like possibly none. It would be great to say we could have one of those.
I mean, me personally, what I'd like to see us do, and obviously, council has to look at this, but we still have October, November, and December to happen for 23. So we're as accurately as we can projecting where we're gonna be cash-wise at the end of 23. And my feeling is, let's get through the end of the year, see where we actually end up with truing everything up. You're probably a year out, so maybe we order it at the beginning of the year as opposed to adding it into the budget. I'm saying, the reason I asked them to create this list is, we're not forgetting about it, but
I understand.
kind of putting it to the side so that we can get through the process. And let's hope, you know, last year we added back in $60,000 from overtime from snow removal, because we had a mild winter.
Right,
You know,
Right.
we have a mild winter, you're gonna get half a truck,
right.
you know? So I think there's some things that can happen. We get a couple real estate transactions, just, and the same with the police car. I think we look at those things, we already ordered one police car, let's just hold off on the other one, and let's just see how the year ends, and see how maybe the first quarter starts next year.
Yeah, I understand the job you have to do, I surely understand it.
I mean, it's,
Are you required to make a deposit on these things?
No,
So why not put the order in and?
because if then somebody comes off the lot and says, here's one, now we've gotta pay
Well, you don't have to
$80,000.
say, we definitely have to take it, but like you said, wait
Well, if you're
3
gonna put an
months.
offer in, you gotta take it.
yeah.
We're not gonna say, we'll put an offer in, and, we don't really want it now. We're not gonna do that to people.
It's a freaking Ford Motor Company, it's not that.
Well, no, it's local dealers, the
Yeah.
dealers do that.
Well, then you wait 3 months, figure it out 3 months, that's where I made it.
Well, anyway, that's my opinion on the items that are held. Questions about capital stuff? I mean, I'm not sure what else we can take out.
My concern is the pillars and how much more, there comes a point where the deterioration accelerates.
Right.
And your price of fixing it is exponentially higher. And I'm concerned that if it's not addressed now, it's gonna be much more expensive in a year or two.
Are they of historical relevance?
You have to ask our
Okay, John,
Hills
we're getting
resident
them
there.
on the table.
I don't know the history of them, but they surely look early 1900s to me.
Yeah, I mean, they're super cool. I would assume when they went in, Penn Ave is more
Yeah, it wasn't a
driving
highway.
and less of
But
an
there are Roman
off-ramp.
numerals on the
I
side.
mean, they're on an
whatever.
off-ramp now.
Right, I mean, you have to figure out where it is to find them. That's-
Yeah, I mean, I pass them all the time because I go off that off-ramp.
It's more
It's
of,
right next to the property that was owned and lived in by the Kaiser family, which was one of the early houses in Wyomissing Hills, and they are pretty.
Well, we don't.
neat. What's that?
He might.
it's just one of those
I
things.
mean, is it something that we keep part of it, that, you know, keep the 2 pillars, but maybe not the wall or something along those lines?
Yeah, to me, it's one of those things, where, if the whole thing was removed, you'd have a handful of Wyomissing Hills historians who would be very upset.
I think a lot of people down in the bottom there
Um,
are parked.
Do the lights work?
I don't know.
I believe they do. We had them worked on a few years ago.
I believe Greg mentioned that when they tried to maintain the light fixture, the post that it was sitting on was a little shaky.
Probably
I
rusted
think the
out.
one on the left is, I can see it.
Well, since Jim got a better price on the oil tank versus fixing the other one, why don't we move the pillars back over and we'll trade off for.
For this
So are
year,
you gonna do it in-house or you get?
No, you're gonna have to get a mason for that. They gotta chip out all the.
can't have a community event where we all just go to Home Depot and buy some cement, some guns.
Not
Yeah, I wanna see
And
that.
is that
I'll
something-
come take pictures.
Can that be accomplished this year? Or is that something to budget for next year?
Time of the year with temperature.
Put it this way, I think you'd be better off using Keith's idea of getting it done now.
Yeah.
We can surely make that full attempt to get it done now.
Who would you get to do that?
We had a mason that did some work over at the library earlier this year. What was the dollar figure for it? I don't know if we have to try to bid that.
21,000, which
I
was
don't
the
know if we
same.
have to bid that. Do we have to bid that? 21?
You're like right at
Right
the
at the-
threshold.
There's no tax to it?
What's the threshold?
Schools?
I think it's 19 or 20 grand. We could keep it under.
I was gonna
because
say,
it's-
why don't we keep it under?
Right. We can do that, yep.
All right.
So we're gonna do it this year?
Yes.
It'll go.
Well, you're gonna try to do it this year.
If you know somebody.
Yeah, we had somebody send me the house my husband's happy
It's the guy from
Say
Mount
why?
Penn,
Oh.
with. No, I don't think so, so I just
okay.
asked Ron.
that does a lot of work in the borough called Lapia. He's
Yeah,
from Mount Penn.
Lapia.
Yeah,
L U P
They
I
did the pillars
A.
in front of my house.
yeah,
Those are nice.
yeah, he did a nice job at our house.
Anybody else want to talk about the capital request at this point, or is the committee okay with the suggestion of having some things on hold and reviewing it in the next few months?
I'm good with what we have right now.
Council?
Well,
On the detail, Phyllis, on the detail, I had a question about, all the public works is making the assumption that the public works building is gonna be long-term financed at some point in time to flush out the note. It's 3.6 versus the project of 4.3. Is that your timing issues that,
There are timing, yes.
okay, so some of the 4.3, is that in 2023
Some-
revenue and expense?
Some has already been incurred.
Right,
262,000 had already been incurred.
Right.
We've already advanced on the line, to get reimbursed for that.
right.
Another 270 has been added to the projection for a change, or for payment apps that we expect to process this year.
2023.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the difference between the 3.6 and the 4.3.
Yeah.
Okay. And at this point, and I guess we're all on the same page, but we still only anticipate 1.7 coming back from the state.
Well, it's 50% of whatever we spend.
The construction cost.
But it's only the construction costs.
But we can use our engineering costs towards our match. So anything we spent, like some of those soft upfront costs that we spent on engineering, as long as we can provide proof of this is what we spent, say it's $200,000. Of our match of 1.7, we could say, here's 200,000, that was engineering costs we already paid, that goes into our match.
So if we spend $4.3 million, when this project's finished and we look at, didn't get anything back from the state, and we look at the line of credit and the short-term financing that expires in April of 2025, and we have pulled $4.3 million on that, how much will we get back from the state?
Assuming you paid all your expenses for the project out of that 50%.
Okay,
So it could be, potentially be
We talked
more
about
than
furnishings
1.7.
weren't eligible for the match before, or something along those lines.
Correct, but I didn't think we were talking about putting those with
well,
as
the
part of this.
4.3 is everything. That's the contingencies,
Then
that's
say
the,
4, and what would we do, put 300,000 in for furnishings? So say 4,
and then what did we decide the contingencies, they were 300.
yeah.
Both were 300.
So it's 600 total between furniture and contingencies, and then we added Berkey for 120.
Right.
And
But
McCarthy-
we're still targeting 4.3 million for the project,
Yeah,
or less if the contingencies
If
don't.
the contingencies, don't, right, or the furnishings don't cost that much.
But at this point, our threshold is, our ceiling's 4.3.
yes.
And just let me say this, that Berkey expenditure is money well spent already. Yeah.
Did we put shovel in the dirt yet?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, they're moving earth, yeah. The salt shed's not down. You know,
There's actually 2 payment apps that we received for the insurance and bonding from 2 of the contractors.
Okay, good.
That was not expected.
Number 20.
The only other question I had asked Michelle to look into, police is here, and with fire. Part of the presentations made by Colin and by John to justify 2 new patrol officers and Colin, a new firefighter, was there would be a direct relationship reduction in overtime. Is that factored in here?
I think Phyllis can give an explanation on the firefighter, and
Thanks,
Sergeant
Jim.
Bauer is here to talk about the police side of it.
Want me to go first?
Go ahead.
Go for it.
So the way John explained it to me is, the reason the overtime is showing a little bit of a reduction is we pay out there's a lot of guys who have a comp time bank. So they get paid, time and a half in comp time. So at the payout at the end of the year, it's gonna come out of the regular salaries, not the overtime budget. And he's also factoring that with more police, hopefully that the overtime is not gonna increase dramatically, because we're paying a lot of overtime right now covering shifts.
But it was supposed to come down, not stay the same,
What was supposed to come down?
overtime.
I think he put in a little bit of a buffer in case there was a problem. Right now, there's anticipated, retirement in July. He can't guarantee that person's gonna walk out. They can't put in their papers until July. Every indication we're getting is that person is leaving, you know, the day he's available to leave. But he can't guarantee that, so that's why there's a little bit of a discrepancy.
I guess I still don't get why, I get we're hiring 2 new guys, but our salaries for police officers go going from a projection of 2023 from 1.5 to 1.8, so it's $300,000 higher than this year, and overtime staying the same.
Yes, so the salary's staying the same because a lot of guys are electing to take their overtime payment as comp time. And then that gets factored in, since they're already being paid the time in comp time, at time and a half, that payment at the end of the year is gonna come out of the regular salaries, not the overtime budget. So that's why that's increasing. Right now, I think he anticipated,
So the reduction would be, there is an anticipated reduction, it's in salary, not in overtime.
I think the anticipated reduction is gonna be in the overtime, if he's understanding correctly.
Then I don't understand.
But
But we
he's,
went-
that's the
we're
problem, that
increasing
he's not
we're
reducing
increasing
the
the
overtime
salaries
budget.
by $300,000. We hired 2 new guys, and we're increasing the salaries by $300,000.
So right now, Keith, say I'm a police officer and instead of working 84 hours this week, I work 100 hours this week. I can choose to either bank that at comp time and at the end of the year, pay that out up to a max of 120.
I believe so, yes.
So get paid time and a half for it at the end of the year in one lump sum payment.
But the justification to bring 2 new guys in was there was an offset between the 2 new guys' salaries at a lower rate and not having to pay the overtime or the comp time. That was the presentation.
I don't disagree with you.
My understanding is he's factoring in the people staying all year, even though they're indicating they're leaving. One's indicating he's leaving.
So if we have 6 months and one officer's salary sick.
And is he using the salary for a full-time, like a year 5 police officer for
Versus-
everyone versus,
My estimates used an average,
okay.
because there's such a range of experience, but there's 2 additional factors. The contract has a 3.5% rate increase,
Correct.
which on the $1.5 million would be over $50,000.
Okay, still not 300.
And 2, many of the shifts this year did not have 3 people on the street. He's hoping to get back to full staffing.
And actually, there's another point to that, which is one of the 2 new hires needs the academy, which he won't start until January, so till he can actually come out on the street, July, August, September.
July, by himself.
So there's a
September.
300
October.
right there. I get your point, but if the one officer retires July 1 and the new one goes on July 1, and we're budgeting for both their salaries for the full year, the reality is it's really only 1 salary, not 2, if that all works out.
Yeah.
Okay,
Did both of the new hires pass the?
I think we also talked about that a lot.
My understanding is
In my
yes.
opinion, the fire
well,
department.
that's the other issue.
The fire department, one of the reasons we said we'll go to add a person per over the next couple of years is because we thought it would significantly, this is police, it's fire, significantly
We moved
reduce,
off of you.
significantly reduce overtime over the course of a year.
Correct, and then the
But now we have
first,
now we have one night, right, someone maybe not in right now, and
they
that
haven't
person will be
been
filling.
in for quite some time.
I did reduce the estimated wages for firefighters on draft 2.
Okay.
You know, did I miss, but I don't see any overtime.
Well, it's all,
He rolls it into one for
It's
fire.
all one
It's
number.
all one.
It's all a number.
Police separates it out by the code, fire just doesn't.
The information's available
Okay.
from the payroll system.
No, as long as you know the difference, personally, it just
The
I
way
think
the,
cleaner to have
We're
a,
doing the
the way
direct
their
line item.
contract reads with, if they're scheduled to work and someone substitutes for them, it's this kind of overtime, but if they're acting a rank up, then it's a different kind of there would be 12, 15 different budget lines if I categorize with every firefighter category there was.
We're going to price that, we're doing the dead opposite of defund the police. We're doing the dead opposite of
Keith, are
that.
you interested in the staffing information John asked me to get together?
Not unless it results in some reduction in the dollars,
That's it, I'm sorry.
then I'm not really interested in it. We already went through this, I mean, that was part of his whole presentation, so we went, it's not gonna change anything from a budget standpoint, it's not gonna change anything. So those are my questions. I guess the question is, can we live with that?
So our anticipated fund balance this year, when we voted on this at this point last year, was, I just want to revisit that number again. We were willing to live with $7.2 million, right?
Correct.
And that is unreserved.
It is
So we were staring at 8.3 fully, a full total with reserves. And this one would take it to 5.4.
Correct.
7.8.
So,
Yeah.
a $700,000 difference in the overall fund
Oh,
balance.
$750,000 difference, right?
Right,
Right.
but when we double the reserves,
I still propose we add more to the trash. We're not making a profit on it, we're just paying,
Reserve-
we're using less of the
Fund
reserve
balance.
money to pay for the,
But at this point, we're breaking even. Recovering a cost at 100%.
Right.
we're covering the cost 100%, but we're still subsidizing it from
No.
No,
reserves.
no.
It's still tax money.
Not anymore.
No, this year,
We're
We did in 23.
for 23, there's a deficit
Okay.
projected,
But not
and that's the
24.
fund balance in hand.
Got it.
24, we're breaking even, which is what the intent was, I think.
Yeah, you're right, no, I'm sorry.
We're not, yeah, so I would not suggest we increase that.
So the most dramatic increase in our budget is in the reserved monies versus the unreserved monies. But we're looking at total reserves that we have, whether reserved or unreserved, we're talking $715,000 less.
No, $2.4 million. We are, based on draft number 2, we're projecting that the unreserved fund balance at the end of 2024 is 5.4 million.
Right.
Compared to a projection of 7.8 million at the end of 23. So
Well, I'm going to where we thought we could live last year.
Last year, we thought we could live at 7.2 million.
Right.
Now the question is, can we live at 5.4? Knowing,
Well, 7.2, okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
knowing that 4.3 divided by 2.1, let's say 2.1, knowing that $2.1 million is going to a longer-term debt, $2.1 million of expenditure is going to a longer-term debt and not relevant to the current budget.
So when are we gonna start talking about the emergency services tax?
I think we have to start that conversation for next year.
Why? Yes, is that next meeting or this meeting?
No, we can do, if we're doing it for,
If we're doing it for 2020, I don't
He's saying to
think,
go into effect in 25.
we would,
Oh.
Listen,
Or-
did we pass,
Why are
did
we
we
waiting that
propose
long?
something about the Western Berks ambulance?
I'm serious, probably that
Did we-
long.
only
say we're-
because.
well, we're
one
still
of the-
giving them the 25, that
50.
Because one of the objections has always been carrying a large cash reserve balance and raising taxes. And I think that, I think that's where, like Greg Porter was always at, is why are we raising taxes if we're carrying these huge reserves? And now, especially if we're going to finance some of the large expenditures, I tend to agree with him. I don't think we should raise taxes and carry those big fund
But
balances.
we have even larger expenses coming out.
But it sounds like those large expenses, we'll look at financing as opposed to taking it out of cash.
We should, but still,
Why continue to create large fund balances
we're just,
And
I'm
raise taxes.
trying to maintain the fund balance.
I don't, why?
For emergencies.
Well, we're gonna finance these, we're gonna finance the long term.
The fund balance has been down because of financing costs.
Well, that's what I'm saying, I think we're now at the point where, now I think you have to start looking at it. I don't think you're at that point, that's my opinion,
But it's gonna continue going down as we looking at something.
exactly, so I think.
So we're gonna be down, what, another 2 million the following year before something gets started? I mean, how's that make any sense?
I just think that having a emergency service tax requires more debate than what we're gonna have right this meeting.
Well, and also, if we implemented the tax earlier, then we can get that police car that they need, we can start putting aside money for the fire trucks that are inevitable, I mean,
What does a quarter of a
there are
mil
things
cost?
that we need that we're not doing because we're not
Quarter of a
willing to have
mil.
fund balance go down lower. So, I mean, to me, we ought to start it sooner rather than later because we do have those expenses, we're just not willing to incur them for the sole reason that we don't want the fund balance to go lower. We need to do these things.
But I think until we work out all these large projects and figure out where we're going to be, it never makes any sense to raise taxes, because if you raise them, you're not gonna turn around in 2 years and drop the taxes. So let's be damn sure we really need the money before we do it. And if we can wait 3 months for a truck, let's wait for a truck. Let's not buy one now, raise taxes, so we have another truck. The tax is gonna be around long after the truck's gone.
There is something to be said about raising taxes minimally over time versus a large, passing a one bill tax at some point.
Right. We start out with a tax,
But the suggestion I had was that it not just be a general tax increase, that it be an emergency service tax, so that it goes for a specific purpose.
Exactly, because they need that extra vehicle, the fire department's gonna need equipment.
There's restrictions as to what, Michelle sent that out, of what the restrictions are, and what it can be.
You can't use it for personal.
Hold on a second, I still have it written down. So you could use it for building, fire apparatus, and training, not more than 1 million can go towards salary, and you can't charge more than 3 mils max.
That would be the one.
And that's a fire tax though, that would only apply to the fire department. Your emergency service tax, we already have, which is local services. It's the LSU tax.
The last times taxes were raised were in 2021,
Was when?
By a quarter.
a quarter of a mil.
So what do we need to do next? What's our next, or do we have another
A
budget?
motion is needed for me to make the changes you discussed, which is really just, there's no 24 changes. The changes we discussed pertain to the projection for the gas pump and to add the pillars. So the beginning of the year fund balance may change. There's no, I have not heard any changes for 24 to draft 4, or draft 2.
Do we need to look at any of the overhead transfer accounts for within the funds to shore up any of the deficits in there?
If we look at the fund balances by fund,
You had mentioned that you didn't know if something was gonna go negative,
well, the refuse fund was the closest,
right, which now.
which is now it's maintaining. The highway is pure funding. So is there already deficit proposed for both the water and the sewer fund? The sewer fund, decreasing 1.8. Order to 2.4, I mean, we could take more, we have to verbally justify the.
I mean, is it
additional-
necessary at this point, or no?
It doesn't change the bottom line.
Right,
All it
exactly.
does is shift available funds from the utility funds.
So at this point, we really don't need to do that, we'll just wait. And I think that we bring it to council, bring it up to council and let them debate it.
I'm not on the committee, I appreciate your letting me speak.
One thing we have to keep in mind, and I think what we've done with these reserve accounts over the last couple of years is fantastic. But when you're comparing it to 8 years ago, when I got on council, there was none of the, we were just, this would have been, we're projecting a balance of $7.682 million. I mean, I think we're doing the community a service by starting to save for expenses down the road, but, you know, the reality of it is there's still $7.62 million.
There is, but what happens is, what you don't get using this methodology is you don't get, we bought a fire truck for $1 million and now your fund balance just went down by $1 million.
No, I totally understand. I'm not, but my point is, when I came on the council, there was $11 million sitting in here, or wherever the hell the number was. You know, that, there was no reserve set up, so when we did have the $1 million hit, it came right out of it.
And there's still, like Phyllis just said, there's still $1
$1
million
million sitting right there.
Right.
Correct.
almost 12.
When you pick up the fire truck, yeah, it's gonna have to get ordered next year, because it's 2 years away.
But we don't pay for it next year.
That is correct.
And
But we now have $480-some thousand, because we didn't use that
Also,
to pave Buckingham or to add a road to pave, do something with the library. I mean, we did the right thing when we got the money from what we sold to keep it in there.
right,
That's gonna be spent down the road, but, yeah,
I think the whole fire department is another issue that you gotta resolve before you do anything.
Well, I agree, and from looking at the numbers, we're not gonna resolve it next year. I can't
Well,
see it.
what did spring, they put it up to $142,000? What did we
Yeah,
pay?
something like that.
It has a
146.
built-in escalator, we're at 144.
But I thought they came back with an increase beyond the escalator.
Here, it's in-
No, I mean, John Groller assured me by email they weren't asking for any more this year, and the escalator for next year would be the escalator.
Oh, I thought somewhere along the line I read.
It's in here, I saw it.
No, I know it's in, but I thought they went beyond the escalator.
It's not built into the budget, I was not aware.
No,
I've not heard anything.
she's been included on all the conversations.
Okay, I just remember you saying something about.
I was worried they were gonna come back, his original email made the comment of, well, we hired another full-time fire
Yeah,
inspector
that's-
and we did
yeah.
this. And my question to him was,
145.9 or 146.
Yeah, 145.
are you telling me you're going to be asking for more money in 2023 to cover these expenses? And the answer is no.
Okay, I didn't remember
Do
the
those
other
things
thing.
benefit us?
But
That's
like
a
you
much
said,
longer
I don't
conversation.
see where we're gonna be able to do anything, like we talked about. We'll just have to live with it.
So, anybody else
I
have
know.
anything
It's ugly,
you wanna talk about?
really.
The next regularly scheduled meeting is on November 9th. In addition to our regular business, would you like to have, there's not a draft 3 because there's no changes to this. I will
Yeah,
round it off and make the.
the only thing we might do with that is if someone feels the need to increase taxes or not. That could be the only piece of discussion.
or if you come back, Phyllis, and tell us you misread the 7.8, it's actually 8.4. That would change things too.
8.7, not 7.8, right?
That would change things as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't anticipate doing anything on the revenue side this year.
So I'll take draft 2, change it to proposed, so that the committee can recommend it to council.
So, the next meeting's our regular finance meeting the 9th, then it goes to council on the following week,
And council approves it for advertising.
We've done,
advertising, and then it gets approved at the December.
December council.
So we still have time to do something.
Yeah, and to talk about,
Council debate.
having money for an emergency, just because we have these reserves, we have $480,000 in the reserve for a fire truck. I'm only using that because I just brought it up.
450.
450. If an emergency came up and we needed 450, we could use those dollars and then have to deal with the $1 million or the $1 million plus that we gotta deal with down the road, but that is an
The
emergency purpose.
reserves are really just labels
Right.
that the committee approves.
Yep.
And
So I think that's the
they
important
have
part to
changed.
understand. We have reserves set
Over
up
time.
because we're planning for future expenses, which I think is brilliant. I think it's wise. I don't know that,
Absolutely. difficulty.
I mean,
But if all hell broke loose and we needed $400,000 because the roof caved in on the fire department,
It's our
we
Christmas
could
fund.
we could take it out of that reserve fund and put it into that fund.
Same as the MS4. There's nothing saying we had to spend, we were putting the MS4 money aside to prevent any type of those hits. You get an emergency, you can always use $100,000 out of that if you have to.
Correct.
And you just replace it, or you take the hit when the need comes up. It was all in anticipation of not having those huge hits when you know it's coming.
And not driving your deficit, your budget down so low,
Right.
and then on top of it, having the $1 million hit.
Exactly.
Okay?
Or other needs or.
But, you know, if God forbid something happened to the fire station that costs $500,000, we could just say, all right, we'll deal with the fire truck next year, but we have the almost $500,000 sitting there that we could use if we need to. If something happened to our creek that we had to fix it somehow,
Stop talking about bad things happening.
I'm just saying. The reality of it is, my point is, just because we have reserves doesn't mean we've depleted our emergency funds.
Right.
No, the only odd thing that comes up is if you have reserves and you have the possibility of raising taxes and you have a large reserve, then people start to wonder, you have to more explanations have to come out
Exactly.
to explain why you're raising taxes when you have all these reserves. And reserves aren't for everything, that's why you can move it from one to another, but it's brilliant. It just needs to be articulated properly to the constituents so they know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Phyllis,
We haven't
overall,
depleted the budget to
what was
$5.4 million.
what was your
We depleted
income,
7.6.
revenue, what was your
And we're
revenue
still at
income
11 right now.
associated with interest? What did you use for, what did you
For
use?
24?
So to add tax dollars
I
to it.
gauged it back to 500,000.
Again, were
Uh,
there things that we're
percentage.
saying we can't afford?
Well, they're
They're
still
saying
rising, although
saying
Ron's
we can't
predicting it's
afford
gonna
Another
pull back a little bit.
So,
police vehicle.
4%? What did you use? in-
I don't use an
Percent
actual
for it, I think
percent
we're
because
gonna defer it to
the
another
balances
year.
are gonna be
Oh,
all over the
I mean,
place.
okay.
I said
It's not
that
like
for the
all
current
the
year, during the time of
constituents out
rising
there are
interest,
saying,
we
"We
were
need a
at,
new truck, we need
I
a
think we're
truck."
gonna end
It's like
about
our own little club
620.
here needs a truck.
Sure.
And
That
so
we're gonna incur in 23,
And not
or
I think our total interest income for the current year will be 620,000.
do you have any, are we in a position, any of that being carried over to 24 at this point? Or is it all gonna come due in 23?
All our Pliget maturities will mature by the end of December.
Okay, so our
So
next
everything
move will
is-
start moving stuff into
yes.
24.
Everything, if we don't reinvest in it into 2024, will be sitting in the Pliget class account, which is now over 5%.
Yeah.
So,
Killing.
I've estimated next year's interest income at 500,000 and just allocated it over the different funds
On,
in their
on,
respective
on the
cents.
project sheet, then the capital expenditure project sheet for the public works building, are you gonna have a line item for interest expenses?
I do.
Are you gonna have a line item for offsetting interest income? So on the project sheet,
On the,
public
actually, I
works,
have it on the Pliget sheet. I have my interest recap, and then I have my interest expense. Because
so
we
we keep
actually,
that separate from the public works project?
just for interest discussions.
Okay, just for interest discussion.
There's actually a state mandated account number
So
to use
Public
for
Works
interest that's paid.
Will be irrelevant, it'll just be, we'll just go by based on the projected costs, we won't factor in the interest paid expenses.
That's a financing function, so it's
Right.
actually under general government, as are the proceeds from the debt.
Perfect, yep, perfect.
I will say that, this committee continues, to operate in the most responsible fashion that there is. I mean, here we are, one of the wealthiest municipalities, in the county, not to mention the largest borough in the county. Our tax dollars are, less than any other borough, and our services that we provide are so much greater than any other municipality. Yes, we're strong. We're frustrated because there's great things we want to do. But, we have to put some of those projects on hold, and there is being responsible. And so I commend this committee, I commend you, Phyllis, and all the other department heads, for, once again, being responsible while looking at this.
Thanks, Phyllis, good job.
Make a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Thanks.
I had the answer, but I didn't.